Okie dokie. So today, prior to lesson 141, there's a review which begins to introduce the second part of the workbook of A Course in Miracles. And of course, the second part of the workbook of A Course in Miracles is where we begin to be able to use our hearts and our minds to gain true perception, because we have successfully trained our mind to be open to the correction that's always available, with the recognition that the best way to come to know is by operating with a mind that is unsealed based on what it thinks it knows from its own past experiences, and need to how should I say this? What word can I use? Need to find constancy and consistency. Now, the need in the mind, the integrity of the mind that wants you to find constancy and consistency, is because your mind holds only what it thinks with God's, and God's mind is consistent and constant in its expression of the eternal and infinite nature of its reality as being love. So here in the world, the ego mimics the idea of God's mind in its attempt to find constancy and consistency within that which has no constancy and consistency, and literally has no validity or truth because it doesn't exist in reality. So it's attempting to offer you constancy and consistency by pointing you to things within the world where there is no constancy and consistency. And hence, when this says my mind holds only what I think with God's, the reason why that is true is because only what we think with God exists as eternal and infinite, and everything in the world exists in a realm of the temporal nature, where things come and go, have beginning and ending. So it can't be held in a mind that's eternal and infinite and constant in its understanding, and let's call it, and constant in its ever increasing expression of that which is eternal and infinite, or let's call it love. So my mind holds only what I think with God. Of course that's true, because God's mind is eternal, infinite, whole, and perfect. Your mind is eternal, infinite, whole, and perfect. So the only thing that it can hold is that which is eternal, infinite, whole, and perfect. It must, in its own integrity, reject that which you offer it in place of the consistency of the kingdom, because it knows already that there is no consistency, there is no constancy, because there's nothing of God in it. The thoughts that the ego fosters and the thoughts that occur when we identify with the ego are all of a temporal nature, with the beginning and ending, and all are based on the denial of reality. So therefore they're based on nothingness, and nothing they remain. So your thoughts that we think or have thunk for us when we identify with the ego can't possibly be held in an eternal, whole, perfect, infinite mind. And that's what this is trying to get us to understand. Now, there's an interesting thing. Let me even just read some of this for a second. This is the central theme, which unifies each step in the review we undertake, which can be simply stated in these words: my mind holds only what I think with God. This is a fact, and represents the truth of who you are and what your Father is. It is this thought by which the Father gave creation to the Son, establishing the Son as co-creator with himself. It is this thought which fully guarantees salvation to the Son, for in his mind no thoughts can dwell but those his Father shares. Lack of forgiveness blocks this thought from his awareness, yet it is forever true. And what is lack of forgiveness except the unwillingness to release yourself from the thoughts that the ego fosters in its attempt to not have you realize and continue in the denial of your own reality. Forgive yourself for what your brother has not done to you, but what for you have done to yourself, but has no truth and therefore can't possibly do what it sets out to do and maintain the experience it wants you to set out. And the proof is that the experience is not constant, it is not certain, it is not infinite, it is not eternal. There's no consistency to it. It changes with the tides and the blowing of the wind, and leaves you hanging in the wind and drowning in the tides. So it's all right there in front of you now, because your mind, based on your experiences that have occurred in the first part of the workbook, are beginning to offer you cracks between the concrete nature that was imposed upon it when the part of the mind that remembered not to laugh at the tiny mad idea of separation became as concrete and solidified in the necessity to name and maintain control of its environment through the naming and thinking it understands, because it has the ability to call it something, and then holds everything within the static condition of its need to call that, its need to get the result of what it called it in order to find its place. Oh, now I got a good beat on everything. I know what everything is. Meantime, you can't know what anything is here, because there isn't anything here. It's a hallucination. It's a dream of a condition other than what it is you are in reality. And that's sort of like the big joke that we play upon ourselves, and yet we don't find it funny, because it's what causes the sickness, suffering, and pain that ultimately causes us to begin to even examine open-mindedly what Jesus is presenting in the text and the workbook and the manual of A Course in Miracles. So it's a joke played on yourself in the utilization of a twice-told tale. In the second telling of it, you forgot the reason that was prior to the first telling, and now you're stuck between the first and second telling, trying to make it true when it's not possible for it to be true, because it has no basis in reality, has no cause in reality, so therefore is causeless. And not having a cause, there's no purpose, no meaning, and you're constantly looking outside yourself to find the purpose and the meaning when it's not there. All you have to do is follow your own thoughts back from whence they came. Sit there for a second, not justify them, and what will happen is the light of the Holy Spirit that you brought into this world with you when you came, just like you brought everything else with you when you came, will bridge that gap and begin to fill in the cracks and allow the light to enter into your mind. And because the light is something that your mind can hold, because it is what you think with God, it remains as true. And now can be a way to look at and useful in looking at everything else that isn't true, that you so much believed and tried to hold true, hold yourself true to, and hold your brothers in the world true to as well. That's the end of that. That's the end, and the end of that comes based on the practice of the first part of the workbook of A Course in Miracles. What he says. Now a review again, this time aware. We're aware. Now we've become aware. You can't say you haven't been told, and you've been told it in your own consciousness, so it's there for you to call upon, and no one can tell you that you're not aware of it. All the best that you could remember is, oh, I forgot, which is what you need to remember. Because the idea that, oh, I forgot, can be applied to the entire world of space and time in recognition of why you've hidden reality from yourself and your own experience. It's that simple. Oh, I forgot. For the second part of the learning, how the truth can be applied. Yes. So now we're going to begin to apply the truth, not just undo the false, because we've trained our mind sufficiently to be in the activity of undoing the false. Now we're going to utilize the truth to begin to become aware and stay aware in an ever self-revealing process. The truth can be applied. How is it applied? Every time you feel that stagnation, every time you feel that doubt, every time something comes up that causes you something other than the peace and joy and the integrity and harmony of reality, you can apply that and undergo a healing based on the undoing that has occurred and the recognition of the light that's seeping through the cracks as being real, because it doesn't go anywhere. And when you align yourself with the experience of it, you feel entirely different. And that feeling can't be found in the world, but it can be experienced within yourself. And that's how you know you've never lost it. It's that simple. Oh, I just forgot for a second. Rather than utilizing the mental, intellectual gymnastics to spiritualize your thought in the justification for the truth of it, you no longer have to do that, so you can just release it and apply the truth to yourself, to your own thinking, and continue to know who you are and not have to get lost again, except by the recognition of your own forgetting, which is perfectly suitable to where you're meant to be in your own awakening. Now, what I find interesting is, let me read a little bit more. Such is our aim for this review and for the lessons following. Thus, we review the recent lessons and their central thoughts in such a way as will facilitate the readiness which we would now achieve. The readiness which we would now achieve. Not now in the future, not now as a continuation of achievement, but which we will now achieve each moment that we apply it to achieve the purpose and aim that this course brings to us, which is ultimately know thyself. There is a central theme that unifies each step in the review we undertake, which may simply be stated in these words: my mind holds only what I think with God. This is a fact and represents the truth of what you are and what your Father is. We read that. And let your minds hold only what you think with God. Your self-deception cannot take the place of truth. It cannot take the place of truth because it gets way too painful. And obviously, if you're reading this, you've gotten to the point where you don't want the pain anymore, even though the pain may still be there. But the motivation to relieve yourself of the pain has been sufficiently implanted in you through the recognition that you don't want the pain. So the not wanting of the pain utilizes the experience of the pain for the motivation that you require to continue to learn what Jesus is offering us in this teaching, to reveal yourself to you as you gain a true perception, a new whole perspective of yourself that you can look out from and know yourself and your brother in true relationship with God and creation, and therefore bring an end to the necessity for this learning sort of pen that we've put ourselves into that we call consciousness in the world of space and time. Begin each day with time devoted to the preparation of your mind. Now, the interesting thing about these lessons are the couplets are paired and loop around to begin to offer you a view of your own eternal and infinite nature. They take the loop of consciousness, the causal loop that each of us has been locked into in the repetitive cycle of the egoic thinking, and allow them to meet at a crossword where you can utilize the idea that my mind holds only what I think with God. So you've taken the circle and twisted it so that now it's representing infinity. You're beginning to see the infinity of your own true nature in these couplets that are joined in the expression. Let's take, for example, today's lesson 141. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness offers everything I want. Now, you don't have to know what happiness is. You don't have to know what the everything is based on the egoic idea of breaking things into parts that you want. You're just making a simple statement. I recognize now forgiveness is the key to my happiness. And forgiveness offers me everything I want. Now, and my mind ties together with my mind holds only what I think with God. Now, the only thing that can arise in your mind is the happiness as the everything you want, which is held for you in God's mind as what your mind is. If you could see that and understand it, you'll begin to make sense. This will get very, very easy. It'll get simple because you're using the same action of mind that you've always used to cause you to live in the circular motion of the ego, to begin to understand the infinite nature of your own mind, where there's no energy loss and there's perfect efficiency. You're not running yourself down in some causal loop of dissatisfaction. You're allowing yourself to exist at the crossroads of eternity and infinity, or what Jesus calls the bridge. You've come to the bridge. You're at the bridge. You brought yourself to the crossroads and you're at the bridge. And your mind holding only what you think with God, and therefore tying it and causing it to be eternally joined with God. When you offer it these simple lessons, forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Got that, right? Okay. Forgiveness offers me everything I want. So if forgiveness is the key to happiness, and forgiveness offers you everything I want, everything you want, then everything you want is associated with happiness. And there's a constancy established. Now, the constancy can't be in the world of the ego, but because of the nature of the divine mind, which you're created to be one with, the infinite and eternal joy of God becomes available to you in the coupling of these phrases with the willingness to only be offered it by what God mind offers you. There's no ego in this at all. And yet it brings about an experience that's sufficient enough to show you and reassociate your mind with everything that's whole and perfect, infinite and divine, eternal, and disassociate your mind from anything that is not that, no matter where it comes from, where it stems from, what it's all about. This becomes really simple when you get a handle on what's being offered to you and you finally admit that you've not been able to find it the way you're looking for it. That's the nature of the whole first part of the workbook, attempting to show you over and over again that the way you've been utilizing your mind isn't wrong. What you've been utilizing it to find and the reason and for has been what needs the correction, and these are the lessons that offer you the correction. I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I'm going to offer you the time to do the lessons and use these simple phrases. They're going to bring you a hell of a lot of joy listening to me, that's for sure.